When people ask why I climb, it's easy. To get to the top. Collaboration with the right partner is everything when it comes to the ascent.
Employers rely on us every day to be their team. We partner with organizations to protect what's most important, the promise of a secure future. We will help you on the climb because we are committed to seeing you reach the summit. The only thing you have to do is take the first step.
Hello everyone, my name is Casey Skidgel and I'm the president at Summit Financial Group. We are so pleased to be a sponsor of Big Bang since its inception, and we're excited to share in this hallmark 10th anniversary celebration year. At Summit, we design and strategically implement professional employee benefits, risk management, insurance, and investment solutions that help secure a healthy financial future for our clients. Summit has been proud to work with the Texas Women's Foundation on their retirement plan benefits since 2014. And we are honored today to introduce this panel as they address women leaving the workforce this past year. But before I do, I'd like to acknowledge Ross Dawson Thompson, the CEO of Texas Women's Foundation, who has worked tirelessly as an advocate and set the groundwork for the foundation as she retires at the end of this year. Roz, congrats to you. We wish you all the best in your future endeavors. At Summit, like our partners at Texas Women's Foundation, we look to supporting gender justice, and we understand the vital role that women play in our economy. We care deeply about supporting the foundation and nonprofits that work every day to build stronger families and better communities for all. We believe it's incumbent upon all of us to do our part to close the wage gap. Statistics show companies with a large number of women in key leadership positions financially outperform non-diverse companies by 15%. Through education and advocacy, we can work together to achieve equality sooner. Again, I would like to thank SVP for allowing Summit this honor. And now I'll pass the session off to Ashley Harris, Texas Women's Foundation Vice President of Development, to begin the panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Casey, and good morning to our audience. I'm Ashley Harris, representing Texas Women's Foundation, proud sponsor of Big Bang. And thank you, Social Venture Partners, for having us have this conversation this morning about the state of women at work. This conversation aligns so well with the mission of Texas Women's Foundation. We've spent 36 years investing and advocating for gender parity because there truly are so few resources dedicated to helping women and girls. We are a community-sponsored organization that invests in the power of women and girls to drive positive change. Through research, advocacy, programs, and grant making, we advance economic security and leadership opportunity for Texas women and girls. And as Casey noted, we know that greater diversity in leadership drives better performance at work. The foundation established the Economic Leadership Council, better known as the ELC, in 2014 to support our women's leadership mission pillar. The ELC is a C-suite peer group of executive women who are dedicated to advancing the corporate pipeline of women in their firms, their industries, and their communities. And now I'm pleased to introduce a powerhouse panel of ELC members who want to share the practical, successful ways that they're keeping women advancing in their firms. Bonnie Clinton, Toyota, Vice President and Chief Procurement Officer. Bonnie also co-chairs the ELC. Debbie Dennis, Oncor, Chief Customer Officer, Senior Vice President, Human Resources and Corporate Affairs. Hilda Galvan, Jones Day, Partner in Charge, Dallas. Hilda also chairs the Foundation Board. And Martina McIsaac, Hilti North America, Chief Executive Officer. Bonnie, thank you for leading this discussion. We can't wait to hear the conversation.
Well, good morning, everybody. I'm so delighted to have you here and being able to join us today. This is such an important topic, and I'm just so thrilled that we're able to have this discussion. You know, as we all start to come back to work and we think about the implications of returning post-pandemic, we want to talk about what the big issues top of mind are around management and what you're thinking about and what you're doing around making sure that we address women in the workforce. You know, corporations are looking at the research and the practical experiences that we would all like to hear about that you have been working on and addressing within your companies. We were fortunate enough to have Kelly Ungerman, who's a member of our Economic Leadership Council, share a recent McKinsey study about corporate America and the fact that we're at a crossroads that we have a choice that will affect gender parity and women in the workforce. It's amazing to think that 1 in 4 women are considering leaving the workforce. That is tremendous. That's a big issue, and this is what we were here to talk about. You know, one of the things we want to hear about are what are we doing to make it more sustainable for women to stay in the workforce? What are the implications if they leave the workforce to corporations? And what are we doing to strengthen the communication around this topic within our workforce and for our employees? So we really want to share a little bit today and talk about the challenges that all sectors are facing, but also the fact that different corporate sectors have different challenges as well. So with that, just want to talk a little bit about some of the experiences that you're looking at in order to retain women. And maybe we just spend a few minutes, each one of you share a few thoughts that you're looking at within your companies. Why don't we start with Hilda?
I am in the professional services sector, and I'm a lawyer. So our product is our time combined with our skill set. So what we're dealing with is it's all about time. We have to be unpredictable schedules, 24/7. Actually, in the height of the pandemic, we were probably in the best position for women because everyone was at home. And while it was 24/7, it was 24/7 at home. It's this hybrid model that's causing some issues because they are having to, women tend to be the primary caretakers. They have young children in school, but we're getting back on the road. Judges are asking us to get to their courtrooms, so we're traveling. And the unpredictability of it all, our schedules combined with the unpredictability of this hybrid model is making it very, very difficult for our women lawyers who, again, are typically the primary caretakers.
Debbie, can you share some thoughts?
Sure. You know, for us, Bonnie, in the energy sector, even before the pandemic, some of our roles that during the pandemic, people still had to report to work, either a work site or work location. In some of those roles, like a utility worker or technician, we've always had challenges with recruiting women to those roles. Many of them don't want to work outside. But what we did for those roles during the pandemic was encourage our leaders to be flexible and find ways that from a work schedule they could accommodate that for women. We have a number of women that work in our control centers, and that's shift work. So again, figuring out how that works with a family. And I think now more than ever, as we continue, that's going to remain a challenge, and we'll have to keep focused on how we attract and retain talent for those roles. Now, the other 30% of our workforce during the pandemic, like Hilda described, they were working remote. And when everybody was remote, that worked pretty well. I worry about the new hybrid model, and if it's women who choose to be in the office only 2 or 3 days a week, how that will impact their development, their inclusion in projects. And so it's going to be about how we equip leaders to manage. At our company, we have a view that to retain the culture that we want, a big part of that's collaboration. And what's interesting is people felt like, well, I can do my job at home. I don't need to be in the office. But it's often like what I hear about kids in school. It takes getting them back there, and then they go, oh, wow, I have missed that interaction. But I think we're going to have to really keep our eye on the ball with respect to what this hybrid model means and how we lead and manage and be sure people are included. But I think that's critical, too, to retain women, to give them that flexibility.
Absolutely. All really important points for us to focus on. Thank you. Martina, share a little bit about what you've seen in your company.
Sure. So you have to understand the space where we operate. Hilti sells products, services, software to the construction industry. And for starters, construction is an industry where 90% of people identify as male. So we already have a challenge to attract and retain women. And then within Hilti, we operate in a number of environments, just like Debbie said. We have manufacturing and warehousing and retail and office. So many, many, many different modes of working that we need to think about when we put policies together. So what we did was adopt two foundational principles. One was flexibility almost at any cost. It costs us 20% of an annual salary on average in our industry to attract somebody back to the, or to get someone to come and join the company. So there's almost nothing we can't afford to do when it comes to giving flexibility. And then benefits that meet those female employees wherever they are in their life cycle. And we base the whole thing on trust. So we have a concept called trust-based work hours, which acknowledges that life is going to happen. And for all those work groups, we find ways to allow that flexibility for people to adapt to what they need, but then still understand that they're going to get their work done. So we focus on our top performers, and we pretty much do whatever we can to give them that flexibility.
That's fantastic. I think the trust-based philosophy is really important. And certainly that is building the foundation of your corporate culture. And so these are all things that all the companies need to be looking at. How do we integrate some of the challenges and addressing those challenges with change to reinforce our corporate culture? So thank you for your thoughts on that. So let's talk a little bit about the urgency of why it's important now to stop the backslide of 1 in 4 women thinking about leaving the workforce. So let's in reverse order this time. Let's talk about why is it urgent? What are you seeing in your space, in your industry?
So construction in general is struggling to attract talent, and there will be 500,000 unfilled jobs in our industry this year. So for the industry as a whole, increasing our diversity of hiring and attracting women to the space is our #1 priority, because we simply will not have enough talent to fill the jobs that we have. And so when we make these small gains, we cannot afford to lose them, because the industry story is told by the people that succeed in it. And so my #1 priority is to have women succeed in construction so we can sort of change the face of the industry. And like I said, there's an economic cost to this backslide that obviously I have a personal passion for bringing women to the company, but there's an economic cost to Hilti when we lose a woman. And that fires me up and gives me motivation to be as creative as possible in terms of finding solutions.
Absolutely. Debbie, will you share a little bit about your company, Oncor?
Yeah, I think it's critical. I worry, our turnover has historically been low. And so I think we've got to keep our eye on the ball with respect to what's happening. We haven't lost a lot of women yet. But I think part of what happened in the pandemic, they learned that although it might have been a challenge to be home with the kids, they liked that flexibility. And so if we don't remain flexible, we'll start seeing people looking for other places where they can get that flexibility. And wow, that worries me, because we've made good progress with women at senior level roles, and it's making a difference on how we do business. And that, I think, impacts our business results. I think a lot of that will be using our employee resource groups. We have one for women, and also one that we're about to launch, that we informally launched this summer, for families, which included men as well. But I think it's just that opportunity for to hear from them what we could do better. Not just at the frontline supervisor level, which is critical because that's where the employee experience happens, but also how do we, on a larger scale, as a leadership team, hear from women. You know, we now have 3 women on our leadership team, and it's making a difference on what we think about and how we approach things. And I don't want to lose that progress, and either does our CEO.
Absolutely, that's fantastic. One follow-up question on that, I'm curious. When women with the pandemic, and many women obviously stayed at home, helped to take care of the kids, and also work. The pandemic put women in a situation, in families, that they had no choice but to stay home and take care of kids because facilities were not open.
Right.
Going forward, as we do some hybrid or start to return back to the office, are you hearing anything from the women as to they want that choice? You said that they are enjoying it, to really stay home full-time, to be able to work remote full-time, or is a hybrid going to work, given that there's, you know, childcare involved?
I think it depends. I think there are some women that would say, at this point in time, where my kids are, their age and their needs for me, that maybe I don't even want to work part-time. And my goal would be is how, you know, even before the pandemic, we had a leader that was a really critical leader in our HR team, and she decided she was going to leave and move to Florida. And we were like, whoa, you know, okay. So what we did is we asked her if she would stay part-time, remote. And this was even before the pandemic. And what's ended up, she agreed to do it for a period of time. Well, she stayed, and now we've learned that she can do that role remotely, and she's going to go back full-time because she got past a period in her life that she was ready to do that. So I think it's that kind of one-on-one flexibility in saying, how do you meet people where they are to where they don't have to make a choice to never come back?
I think that's a great
exactly right.
Women in the workforce and being flexible to meet the needs where they are in their career and in their life.
Yes.
So that's a fabulous example. Hilda, tell us a little bit about why it's important to you and your organization to keep women in leadership. We've all heard the statistics about diverse executives and in executive boards and diverse women and having parity in the leadership suite really results in higher performance for corporations. What are you seeing in your industry?
So it's absolutely the case that diverse leadership has positive impact. And a lot of that is, at least in the professional services, we're 2 levels, right? You're either a partner or a non-partner. So we don't have the tiers that you have in corporations. So it's partner, non-partner. And most partners and senior partners are your traditional older white males, and they've done things a certain way their entire careers. And they think that's the way it should always be done. So this is a perfect situation where it's like, well, get them all in. They all need to get back into the office, right? Because their traditional role was their wife stayed at home, and if there were any issues at home, wife handled it. And they may have been involved in their children's lives, but they were not the primary. And so they look at things in a very kind of black and white. And it isn't black and white, it's gray. And when you have had different experiences in your life, whether you're male or female, but just a different experience, that diversity, you know that the challenges that you've experienced and how you've had to navigate those challenges and how you've overcome that. So you're much more understanding of the situation now because you're saying, okay, I may be a male of color, but I know what I experienced in my career and the things that I had to navigate. So I understand the female who is, struggling and juggling all of these things and that she now has to navigate. So you just bring a different perspective, more understanding, more willing to be flexible. Because you've always had to be flexible, and I think Martina said that is flexibility is critical, and sometimes the older you are, the more senior you are, the less flexible you are, and we need that now more than ever.
Absolutely. 100% on that.
I think, related to what Hilda was saying, Bonnie, and putting it into a corporate context, part of it is the creation of policy. Are we flexible? Do we draw on our own experience to create policy? But then once the policy is in place, part of it is role modeling of the policy. And so if I put a policy in place that says, yes, you can work from home or you can attend the meeting virtually, but then I never do it, or my team never does it, then actually the policy has no teeth, because I know then I have to still play by these unwritten rules to succeed. And so I think when you have a diverse leadership team that is all, living their own life, and they, model that and experience our corporate environment in that context, then we show that variety to the team, and it creates this psychological safety to say, I can advance my career, but I can take care of my family and meet all these other priorities. So I do think there's so much to be gained, not only from the thinking phase, but also from the doing phase.
I think that is absolutely 100% accurate. And modeling says so much more than words on a paper. That is really the permission.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you for that.
But, I would add that modeling is important, but communicating.
Yes.
Right? It's just having those conversations all the time. And sometimes you may implement a policy and recognize that, this isn't working, and be okay saying, okay, guys, this is not working. Let's talk about this, and let's try to figure out a different way. So, you have to be flexible. Sometimes you don't get it right, but you have to be willing to acknowledge you didn't get it right and just talk about it. And sometimes that conversation can be with, some of the younger lawyers in my world, and just saying, okay, I know this is what you're trying to do, but here's the impact it's having on you, on our clients, so let's try to figure it out. But if you don't talk with them and just judge them, then it's not a positive for anybody.
Absolutely.
Couldn't agree more. Communication, communication and transparency, so they understand why behind the what. I think that is really critical. Great point.
Yeah.
Did you want to add any?
Well, I was just thinking, it's such a great example. And what's hard is, I think, for our leaders is oftentimes having that candid conversation. So they're afraid they're going to say the wrong thing, how it's going to be perceived, and also this, judging people, to your point about trust, based on someone that they lost trust in. And so I think that's where it really is critical to have the conversation and to teach people how to lead effectively and hold them accountable.
Absolutely.
One thing I've seen that that is a little frustrating is we do judge people differently, and so when we're talking about somebody working from home who may be male, it's like, oh my God, he's doing such a great job, and he is, right? And we focus on what a great job. So when we give an example of someone working from home that's making it work, it's always a guy. Right? And we have women who are doing the exact same thing. When we want to give an example of someone who's not doing it well, it is always the woman, and even though we have a guy that's not doing it well either. So we have to make the point, and I think, women tend to make it as, well, wait a minute, yeah, he's doing great, but so is she. And yeah, she may not be doing well, but either is he, right? Pointing out that it's an individual thing and not a gender thing. And we need to, it's going back to communicating and calling people out in a positive way, saying, wait a minute, yes, he is doing a great job, but so is Sally. She's done all of these incredible things, and making sure that we're judging as balanced as possible, and pointing out the high performers at all levels, and not the low performers, and just based on women. So that's just one thing I've noticed, is that tendency to do that, and having to point that out.
And we can all play that role
Yes.
of making sure that we're highlighting and creating more visibility and equity in those discussions.
And challenge the underlying bias as to why we're doing that, right? Because we're assuming that John at home is maybe he's unproductive because he doesn't like working virtually, but we assume that Sally at home is unproductive because she's throwing in a load of laundry and making cookies during the day. And that's just inherent in how we have to rip those out by the roots. You know, I know when I took over as the CEO right at the beginning of the pandemic, and the thing I worried about every night is if I give this flexibility, they'll think I'm weak because I'm a woman, right? And these biases are still they're in even us, and we're, you know, articulate champions of change, but we have to be, you know, honestly examining why do we do that.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. I mean, it's one thing to fight the fight, but it's so important that we recognize these biases so we can address them the appropriate way. And I think that it's important for it to be talked openly across the genders, male and female, and that it doesn't look like we're just taking one side as well, because sometimes it can be looked at as trying to overcompensate. And I think that we have to be mindful of that, but that we are bringing men and women into the conversation, talking about it openly, and trying to create more visibility across the board. So,
well, kind of back to the initial point, Bonnie, about the importance of diverse leadership. The diverse leaders recognize bias, right? And that's one of the reasons that it's so important to have diverse leaders, because they recognize that bias and can help address those types of issues.
Absolutely. Thank you. So let's talk a little bit about the business functions and how we can bring more women into the conversations, because I think, you know, overall, we don't have gender parity. And so how do we bring, if we don't have gender parity at the board level, how do we bring women into those conversations to help bring visibility around that? And I'll just open it up to, you know, any of you that might have some examples or challenges of what you're trying to do, but maybe some examples of where you've had some success.
I'll go first. You know, one of the things that I guess it's been 3 years ago, our senior leadership team consisted of me and everyone else were white males. And as I thought about even looking ahead at the point in time that I might retire, someday I will, what would happen? Because a lot of the remaining people on the team are not close to retirement, most of them. Some are, but not all. But if I did retire, okay, you replace me, but we still, don't have a way that the senior leadership team is more inclusive, and we get those different views. And so it made sense. So reporting to me was the Vice President of Human Resources, and reporting to my colleague, the Chief Digital Officer, was our CIO, and both women. We said they should be in the room. You're talking all those things, our employee experience, all the technology that drives our business in cyber. And so they were added to the senior leadership team. So they still report to each of us, but they're right there in the room. And it is changing the conversation. It's changing the way we look at things. And sure, it's taking them a while to get their voice, but I feel better about at that point in time, when I do decide to retire, we're going to be better positioned, and we have those voices in the room. And that's been critical at this time when we've been going through an unprecedented pandemic. And I'm so proud of what we did, the CEO and the senior leadership team, to make that happen. It's made a difference. So it's like rethinking, why not? Why aren't they in the room? How do you bring them there? How do you bring them to board meetings where the board gets the opportunity to see some of that other up and coming talent that's your bench strength?
I love that. I think that is a really great example. Pull up more chairs to the table, right? Invite them. And that's a form of mentoring, really.
Yes.
Really. And mentoring is a super important way to create visibility for women up and coming through the ranks, and giving them that experience and that visibility, that exposure, but also so they can be in the room and see what a board meeting is like.
Exactly.
So that's terrific.
And what you say is really, really important, Bonnie, because the needs of women as they move through the levels of management change over time, right? So when you first become a manager, it's a very skill-based conversation. You know, can you lead people? Can you have conversations? What can you do? Then as you move into levels of senior management, it's am I confident and comfortable? Can I take my seat at the table? Can I contribute at this level? Do I believe that I can? And so I think it's important to take a real life cycle look at development and make sure that you're doing the right things at the right point. And you know what Debbie says is make room for those senior levels, help them build their confidence, let them know they can take their seat at the table. And then one level down, how do you build exposure so that when their time comes, they have sponsors? But it's a very personal planning almost and path building, you know, that you can make for women right from the early stages of their career, and then get more leverage at each level, which I think is exciting.
You know, in the professional services world, again, it's a little different in that we're partners and non-partners. It's just the two levels, but you do have senior partners. So one of the things is again, it's the same concept, bringing the women to the table, but the way we're working at it is we're having small groups. So, you know, kind of, it looks like it's, you know, like we haven't really thought it out. It's just like, let's pick 3 partners that are going to get together. But it's usually a young female partner with a senior partner, and we just sit and talk about the issues and how we need to, and everyone's comfortable in small groups. You get in a big group and the conversations get a little bit, you know, this is my view, this is your view, not let's have a discussion. So we're doing a lot of, you know, let's combine small groups of senior partners with young partners, and let's talk about these things, and then it's more personal, and you can connect more and relate more, and then we can go to the bigger group and approach it from that perspective. So it's kind of build small so that you trust one another, right? And then you've got that trust, and you can have the conversation in the bigger group. Versus what tends to happen is the senior partners are meeting, and then the young partners, you know, may or may not be a part of that conversation. So that's one of the things that we're just trying, again, being flexible, trying to adapt and find ways to build trust.
And I think that's really great, is try different things out, right? You know, if it's not perfect, that's okay. Let's tweak it. Let's try something else. And that's really how you find what will work. I love the idea of the smaller groups where they get that relationship building, that confidence, and get that comfort level. And when they are in the larger groups, they've got some of that under their belt, and they can feel more comfortable contributing. I think that one of the things that I love hearing about is that, you know, through mentoring is to, you know, many times at these meetings, you see the executives come in and they do the report out. Here's the results. You know, as executive leaders, there's no rule. You can create your own rules. Bring the person who did the project to the meeting and say, you know what, this person was the one responsible for this. I think you should hear from them what they did and see the results. And I think all too often, companies tend to filter out different levels within the organization. And I really think that's a big missed opportunity. I think it's really great to be able to hear from the actual people who are doing the work on the front lines, give them that visibility, be able to meet them and hear what they did and the results that they delivered. And so I think that is something that we can all do, challenge it. You know, create some new rules, and I love what you're all doing in your different industries, and hopefully this will be good takeaways for the audience. So let's talk a little bit about what are some of the functional needs within your organizations that you would like to see more women entering in that space, maybe some different leadership roles or some maybe subject matter expertise. Tina.
Take on the P&L.
Yes.
What I love to see is when women have the courage to take on the P&L. You know, when you look in corporate leadership teams, a lot of the times the numbers look better in the functional heads, you know, so HR, we have pretty good representation, you know, finance, okay, also, but then really own the P&L and trust that you can run the business. That's where I try to build confidence in young women all the time, and don't allow, and allow is a strong word, but encourage them to think other than maybe a path that looks more obvious. So that's my dream.
I'm with her, the same dream. And we've made some progress, in our field operations that are driving the construction of transmission and distribution and responding to storms. We now have a number of women in those leadership roles. And some of those roles are in areas outside the Metroplex, which is also a challenge to get someone to move their family to another location. But we're making progress, and I don't want to lose that, because I think that profit and loss experience is so critical. I think we now have women that are making their way that someday, I think they're in the pipeline, that they could be the CEO someday, and that's really, for me, would be awesome.
Exactly.
So my world's again a little different. So what I encourage is the women to be the lead lawyer, right? So we may have a team of 5 or 6 lawyers, and often women are comfortable in the second chair, what we call second chair or third chair role, not being the lead lawyer. And it's just, I am the lead lawyer. I want to be the lead trial lawyer, the lead deal lawyer, and it's just aiming for that. Don't get comfortable in a support role, because support roles you'll get great skill set, but you won't have the power, and power is influence, and only can then when we have the power, can we influence the way that we treat all of our employees and bring them up through the ranks. So.
That's a terrific example. It's terrific. Let me ask you a question about, is there some little tip or trick that you have done to help create visibility for women in your organization that has worked really well? And again, I know you each different industries, but I think that many times these little tips and tricks can cross boundaries. So I would be interested in any little tips.
So I'll tell you what I do is I put our women in what I would say is our non-traditional leadership role. For example, we have the partner that leads business development, and then maybe the partner that leads our diversity efforts. I put the woman in the business development role and not in the diversity role. Right, I just, anytime the hiring partner and then the partner that plans our summer program events, I make sure that the summer program events is a guy. I do it every time.
I love that.
And people are like, but the events may not be that great. That's okay. They'll figure it out, right? So that's kind of what I tend to do, is just put them in the roles that you would not expect.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's really great.
Do the unexpected.
Yeah.
I love it.
The event might not be that great.
I love it. That is really great.
Spot on. I love it. For me, it's been about how do you find those opportunities that you can put women leading a project that's very visible, where they might interact with someone that's outside of their own function. And in addition, for board presentations, to your point, Bonnie, why do I need to give the presentation? Bring someone else in that's done the work to where they get visibility. Because I think, of course, we always laugh when you do that, then you're at risk of losing them to your colleague. But that's really the tip or trick from my standpoint, is, kind of a non-traditional, but also where they get visibility they might not otherwise have.
I like that.
And so in my case, and I think most companies probably have some kind of formal talent pipeline process, where we try to surface talent. And what I started to recognize was that when candidates were presented, the females often, they weren't ready, right? But who was presenting them was their manager. So I started a practice of really talent mining. So I try to go down in the organization and meet with women, because I know what I'm looking for in terms of talent and capability, and so I want a firsthand reflection of who they are. So it's just simply a lot of half-hour meet and greet meetings just to know who's out there. And then when the talent pipeline conversations happen, I have a better reflection of who those women really are, because women themselves will sometimes say they're not ready for the next step. And so I would like to be the one to cut through that fog and say, well, actually, I think she is, and I've met her, and I know her. And so I invest a lot of time doing that.
I think that's a great example as well. You know, we've heard the comments about a male will post for a position or ask for that job because they think they're ready for it. You know, they may have, 70%, whatever. The women will wait until they're 100%, until they are absolutely sure that they've got every T dot, crossed and every I dotted, and 100% skill. And that's the thing, is we need to look at the women who are there and have a little bit more room to develop, because that's what roles are about.
That's right.
Right? You have the capability and you still have some room to grow.
That's right.
And really surrounding them with all the support that they need to ensure they're successful, because we do know that they can do it. And I think that's something that I've seen each one of you explain how you're doing that in various ways. Thank you for that.
Cool.
I'd love to spend a little time with each of you to just share your final thoughts, what you're seeing and how you can help and stop the backslide, and general comments and thoughts about women in the workforce in your particular industries. So maybe just final thoughts and wrap-ups. Maybe we'll start with you, Hilda.
So, final thought, I would say that we need to have our women, our younger women, or women in different levels, talk about the value that they bring to the table. And I think we often don't do that. And that's so important, and we need to continue to do that. The women have to say, here's all my contributions, and we have to acknowledge those contributions and share them with others. So I think that's one of the things that we really need to focus on, and I encourage the women in my firm to do that. Talk about what you're bringing to the table, not what you can't do, what you're not ready to do, but what you have done, and because you've done that, you can do the next step. So really along the lines we were talking about already.
Now for me, I think, it's continues to be a journey, and we've made great progress. And so as I think about it, it's going to be critical that we remain focused, that we don't judge individuals. I even know of women that they were so anxious to get back to work. So some women want that flexibility. Others are like, oh my gosh, it would have been, frankly, I think back to my daughter, if I'd stayed home, that would not be a success story for her or me, either one. So, whether you're male or female, it's different. And so how do we make sure that we're not judging an individual based on what our own assumptions are? And how do we as leaders and women leaders that are at the top of the organization make sure that the path is laid where women can be successful, where they have flexibility, where they get their voice to speak up? And I think that's a day-to-day opportunity. It's not something that is a policy or practice, but it's modeling the behavior. It's showing people the way. Be there, listen, and be supportive.
And I would say, as a CEO, I would say there is no benefit or flexible policy that you could put in place that is going to cost more than losing women. So the value of retention and the value of diversity and diverse, inclusive teams in your workplace is so much higher that jump in the pool, give this a try. And what I've loved as we've experimented with this trust-based orientation is you build the framework and the policies for your best performers, and they honor that and deliver back. So don't spend your minutes thinking about somebody who might abuse the trust, because you'll work them out of your organization anyway. That's not who you're trying to save. So the cost of attrition is so huge for all of us that nothing we could do on the other side would be more expensive than that. So just be courageous, try, fail, start again, whatever, but it's totally worth it. So love it.
Great. Thank you all so much. It really is something that we all have to address now. Stop the backslide, keep women in the workforce, create an environment where they will thrive and succeed. And it's good for our companies, it's good for our communities, and it's important that we all even start this at home, because you have to start the pipeline at the very beginning of the process, and that is at home, and encourage women and girls that they can do anything and be the example, and you all are. I commend you for the roles that you play in your organizations and in our community, that you can be at the top and be successful. There's room for women, and we need to make sure that we keep that room open and talked about. So thrilled to have all of you joining us today.
Thanks, Bonnie. Thanks,
and thank you for your wise and guidance and experiences and examples that you shared. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Bonnie.
What a powerhouse panel conversation that needs to be had more than just today. Thank you so much to the Texas Women's Foundation for bringing all of these leaders together. Today is focused on justice and equity. My name is Prisma Garcia. I'm a former SVP staff member and current staff member at MoneyGram International and future SVP partner. I'm here to help you, guide you through today, and we'll be taking a break until 10:30, and we'll be back with Verdes Gris Ensemble, and also a porchside conversation with Dr. Flowers of St. Philip's, and also A.B. Barrett from Ruthie's Rolling Cafe. And of course, at 11 a.m., we have Darren Walker, who's going to be joined by Jennifer Sampson, CEO of the United Way of Metropolitan Dallas, and also our very own Tony Flail, CEO of SVP Dallas. Thank you so much for joining Big Bang, Equity in Action, and I hope you have a great day.